Welcome to your channel. Here we go deep. If you're tired of surface-level content and shallow explanations that never touch what truly matters, you've found the right place. Today, we begin an intense, symbolic, and transformative journey. A deep dive into the human soul, into the depths of desire, sexuality, and all that people rarely dare to speak about. We'll explore how these silent forces shape every choice we make, every relationship we live, and every hidden part of our story that we still don't fully understand. Get ready, because what you're about to experience here is not ordinary. We won't treat desire as a mere impulse. We'll explore it as a language of the soul, an energy that carries memories, traumas, potentials, and symbols living deep within you, even when you don't notice. If you've ever felt that your love life repeats the same patterns, that your emotions confuse you, or that there's something deeper behind attraction, connection, or loneliness, then this video is for you, because sexuality, in Jung's vision, or rather in its often misunderstood form, is about consciousness. It's about integrating light and shadow, and transforming what once hurt you into something that heals you. But before we begin, I have one simple request. Subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps this kind of deep, honest, and responsible content alive. Every new subscription helps this space reach more people who, like you, are searching for meaning. Your support truly matters. Now take a deep breath and come with me. 1. The invisible. Desire, the force that moves the soul in silence. There is a quiet force flowing through each of us. It doesn't shout, it whispers. Through our choices, our desires, and even the decisions we think are rational. We often see desire as an invisible energy that simply pulls us toward pleasure. But in truth, it leads us through far deeper labyrinths than we can imagine. The real question is, do we truly know what we desire? Even when we ignore it, this force still acts, without our conscious permission. It shapes how we see the world, how we connect with others, and how we build our identity. Desire is often mistaken for need, but it's something far more profound. It carries within it stories, images, wounds, and hopes. Like an inner compass, guided by a map we rarely know how to read. Jung reminds us that desire is not a passing whim. It's a language of the soul. When we approach it with respect and curiosity, we begin to perceive the messages that were once hidden. Each impulse reveals something about who we are, what we fear, and what we are still unconsciously searching for. To ignore it is like covering our eyes with a mirror. That's why instead of repressing or giving in to desire, the essential question is, what is it trying to tell us? Every desire has an origin, a reason, a place it comes from. When we live on autopilot, desire controls us. But when we face it with awareness, it reveals us. Desire can be a lighthouse, but it can also be an abyss. It depends on how we choose to walk through it. In truth, desire is the soul asking for expression, and the more we ignore it, the more it finds distorted ways to show itself. In addictions, emotional repetitions, and unbalanced relationships. But when we listen, it can become direction, clarity, and even healing. Jung invites us to look beyond. Sexuality, according to him, is a symbolic language of the unconscious, a code through which our inner world expresses itself. It speaks not only of instinct, but also of history, ancestry, and unspoken wounds. The body feels, but the mind interprets. And often this interpretation carries ancient layers we are not even aware of. A simple desire can bring to the surface memories, traumas, and inner images we didn't even know were stored inside us. In this context, sex is not just a physical act, but a revelation, a symbolic ritual that expresses what is most hidden within us. Here is where the collective unconscious comes in. Myths, fantasies, archetypes. When we feel attracted to someone, we are often drawn not only to the person, but to the inner images we project onto them. This attraction may not make logical sense, but it makes symbolic sense. It is the unconscious trying to communicate, to complete itself, and to heal. This symbolic dimension of sexuality is powerful because it shows us that desire is not a mistake. It is an invitation, a doorway to a deeper understanding of who we are. When we face it with fear or repression, it becomes distorted, but when we observe it with maturity, It reveals its true nature, a creative and revealing force. In the end, sexuality is a bridge between who we are and what we have not yet recognized within ourselves, a mirror, a passage. And perhaps when we start to see it with more attention and less judgment, we may discover not only pleasure, but also meaning. 3. Desire as creative. Jung warned that when desire is repressed or misunderstood, it manifests destructively in compulsions, addictions, and toxic relationships. But when that same energy is embraced and channeled, it transforms. It becomes inspiration, creativity, and connection. It stops being a force that consumes and becomes a force that builds. The difference lies in the consciousness we bring to it. When we look at desire clearly, we realize it is not the enemy. The real enemy is our ignorance. Many of humanity's greatest works were born from the impulses of desire. From art to love, from science to spirituality, everything that moves us comes from an inner place of desire. The problem is not to desire. The problem is not knowing why or for what we desire. It is in this emptiness of meaning that desire becomes corrupted. So the question should not be how to control desire, but how to listen to it deeply. When you understand what it's trying to tell you, you gain freedom. Freedom to choose with more maturity, to stop being a slave to blind impulses, and to become the author of your own story. To desire is human. To transform that desire into consciousness is divine. And that is the true alchemy of the unconscious, turning what dominates us into something that liberates us. 4. Libido, the life force beyond pleasure. Freud saw libido as sexual energy. Jung went further. For him, libido is the vital force that drives human beings. It frees us from inertia, moves us, and pushes us to search for meaning. Libido is not just the desire for someone, but also the enthusiasm for a project, the dedication to a purpose, and the thirst for self-knowledge. This energy appears in everything. When we are passionate about life, our libido is active. When we are creative, our libido vibrates. And when we feel apathetic, tired, or lost, it may be a sign that this force is blocked, repressed, or suffocated by fears or limiting beliefs. The most interesting thing is that this energy doesn't disappear when denied. It simply changes form. If not expressed authentically, it escapes through unconscious channels, often creating symptoms, crises, or stagnation. It's like a river. When blocked, it finds other paths, even underground. The work Jung proposed is about integration. It's not about releasing libido without meaning, but about learning to listen, understand, and guide it. It needs a path, a space to flow with purpose. And that space is built with presence, truth, and connection to what truly matters. When we achieve this, life gains new color. Libido stops being a wildfire and becomes a torch that lights the way. Desire turns into direction, impulse into inspiration, and life stops being only survival. It becomes creation. 5. When desire forces us to face the shadow, desire is seductive but also revealing. It points not only to what we want, but also to what we lack. And here is where it becomes uncomfortable, because it forces us to look at the parts of ourselves we prefer to hide. Jung called this dark territory the shadow, everything we repress, deny, or judge about ourselves. When desire arises, it illuminates these inner regions, exposing needs, fears, and frustrations. We often think we're simply looking for pleasure or connection, but in reality, we're being called to confront something deeper. That's why true desire is not comfortable. It's transformative. Instead of running away, Jung invites us to cross into the shadow, because there lie the answers, the memories, and the wounds that still shape our choices. To deny this part is to keep living in darkness. To integrate it is to light a new flame within. This process, of course, requires presence. It means letting go of idealization, hurry, and judgment. It is a path of emotional maturity where desire stops being a simple impulse and becomes a mirror. And in this mirror, we can see clearly who we really are. In the end, the desire that confuses us is the same one that can heal us. We just need the courage to listen to what it's trying to tell us, not with the ears of the body, but with the deep listening of the soul. It may sound strange at first, but it shows one of the deepest ideas in analytical psychology: the existence of the anima, the feminine part inside a man's mind, and the animus, the masculine part inside a woman's mind. These archetypes are not about gender or social roles. They represent inner forces that affect our emotions, decisions, and emotional connections. These inner images act like mirrors of the soul. A man may project his onto a woman he feels strongly attracted to. In the same way, a woman may project her animus onto her partner. This explains why we sometimes feel such powerful, almost magical attraction to someone, because through that person, we reconnect with a forgotten part of ourselves. These projections are natural, but they become dangerous when we are not aware of them. When we don't realize that what we love in the other person is really an image from inside us, we risk expecting from them what they can never truly give. We create unrealistic expectations and feel hurt when the mirror breaks, revealing the humanity we tried not to see. But when we start to recognize these projections, we take a step towards self-standing and growth. Thema and animus stop being fantasies and become integrated, balanced parts of our personality. Men begin to connect with their sensitivity, intuition, and ability to accept. Women strengthen their reason, confidence, and direction. This inner balance changes everything, even our relationships. True love requires first a meeting with ourselves. Before we seek another person, we must see what inside us needs to be understood and healed. Only then can we stop projecting our needs and start building real relationships based on presence, not fantasy. Love then becomes a mirror of the unconscious. Often love is not truly about meeting another person, it is about meeting our own hidden self. Jung said that we fall in love with what we have forgotten inside us, parts of our soul that we project onto someone else who becomes like a mirror. That is why some connections feel so intense. It's not just about the other person, but about what they awaken within us. This process feels magical, but it can also be dangerous because we tend to idealize the other person. We think we found the perfect one, but in truth we've only met a symbol of something deep within. This doesn't mean love is an illusion. Actually, it means love is a path, a journey of self-discovery, where every relationship teaches us more about who we are and what still needs healing. When we ignore this process, love turns into dependence. We expect the other person to fill the emptiness that only we can understand. We play roles inside the relationship, roles that trap and frustrate us. We lose ourselves trying to find in the other what we have forgotten to look for inside. But when we see clearly, love transforms. It stops being a need and becomes a choice to grow together, to see the other person as they truly are, not as we imagine, and most of all, to realize that every real connection is also a reconnection with something deep in our soul. Love in this sense is a symbolic journey, a dive into the unconscious. And that's what makes it so powerful, so revealing, and at the same time so challenging. How many times have you found yourself idealizing someone, imagining that person as everything you ever wanted? This kind of idealization is very common and deeply unconscious. It happens when we project our needs, fears, and dreams onto another person. The problem is not the idealizing itself. The problem is that we forget ourselves in the process. When we idealize, we stop seeing the person as they really are. We only see the image we have created inside. This creates a gap between our expectations and reality. And when reality finally shows up, it usually brings disappointment, pain, and confusion. The image fades away, and what remains is emptiness. A clear sign that the relationship was not with the real person, but with our own projection. This process goes very deep. Many times we idealize others because we were never taught to look inward. We search outside for what we lacked in childhood, for what we were denied, or what hurt us. Without realizing it, we turn another person into the answer to our unresolved pain. When that happens, love becomes a way to escape, not a way to discover ourselves. Healing starts when we take responsibility, when we understand. 9. The fall of the projection. Where true love begins, passion fades, but not all passion turns into love. This happens because at some point the projection collapses. the idealized image starts to crumble and we are forced to see the other person in their real humanity. This moment is crucial. It's the point where we can choose between seeking true love or giving up because we can't handle the destruction of the fantasy. Jung believed that the fall of projection is essential because only when it falls can we take back what was ours, what we had projected onto others. This is the moment where self-knowledge truly begins, when we stop expecting others to save us and start realizing that we are responsible for our own wholeness. This process can be painful. After all, who wants to see that the prince or princess was only human? But this pain is necessary. It clears our vision, removes the veil, and shows that true love is not what makes us float, but what grounds us, what teaches us to love without illusions. When we overcome the fall of projection, the bond changes. It becomes more mature, more conscious. It stops being a game of need and becomes a creation. The other person is no longer an unreachable ideal, but a being in evolution, just like us. And that's where true love begins. When we look at each other and even seeing their flaws, we decide to stay. Not out of need, but out of presence. Not out of lack, but out of truth. 10. Sex as a symbolic crossing much more than pleasure. When experienced consciously, sex stops being just physical pleasure and becomes a symbolic ritual, a meeting of souls where the unconscious speaks loudly, even without words. Jung considered the sexual act one of the most powerful expressions of the human psyche, not because of excitement, but because of what it reveals. In this intimate encounter, our shadows, fears, and insecurities begin to surface. Here, the unspoken and the unseen rise to awareness, the hidden parts of us still longing for healing. That's why sex can either liberate or imprison us, depending on the level of consciousness we bring to it. When we use sex as an escape, it becomes empty. When we use it as a display of power, it becomes violence. But when we approach it as a sacred space, a space to listen, to surrender, to truly connect, it becomes healing. At that point, the body becomes a temple, and touch becomes the language of the soul. The symbolic journey of sex begins the moment we stop seeing it as a mere act and start seeing it as a mirror. Every gesture, every sensation, every reaction reflects something about who we are, what we desire, what we fear, and what we still need to embrace within ourselves. In the end, sex is a path to self-awareness. Those who walk this path consciously discover that true pleasure lives in wholeness, in the harmony of body, mind, and soul. If you resonate with this message, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It's more than just a click. It's a way to help spread this reflection to others who also need it. Your support keeps this kind of deep, meaningful work alive. 11. The shadow of desire, where the repressed lives. From childhood, we're taught to hide our emotions. We learn to suppress desire, to judge sensuality, to mistrust pleasure. All of it gets pushed into a dark corner of our psyche, be what Jung called the shadow. That's where repressed desire hides. It doesn't disappear, it only disguises itself. This hidden energy returns in distorted forms, compulsive behaviors, repetitive patterns, quiet addictions, and relationships that bring pain instead of peace. The more we ignore it, the more it controls us. Jung once said, what you do not bring to consciousness will control you. And nowhere is this truer than in sexuality. When desire is buried, it becomes a saboteur, leading us into impulsive choices, silent regrets, and confusing relationships. But when we face this energy with honesty, everything begins to shift. What was once fear becomes understanding. What was once shame becomes freedom. Looking into the shadow of desire is like turning on the light in a long-forgotten basement. At first, it's frightening, but over time, we discover precious parts of ourselves hidden there, talents, truths, and potentials we once buried to survive. When we reclaim them, the soul breathes again. In truth, desire is not the villain of our story. The real danger lies in the silence we impose on it. What heals us is the conscious gaze, one that neither represses nor exaggerates, but sees with clarity and truth. 12. The fragmented feminine, between the lap and the fire. Within every person lives the archetype of the feminine, expressed through many faces. For Jung, two of these faces are especially powerful: the nurturing mother and the wild woman. The nurturing mother gives warmth, safety, and care. The wild woman embodies passion, transformation, and fire. Both coexist within us. Yet over time, society has split them apart. This internal division still weighs heavily today. Men are taught to seek an impossible ideal. Women who are both protective and passionate. Mothers and lovers at once. Meanwhile, women feel pressured to choose between being loved and being free. This conflict breeds guilt, insecurity, and confusion in relationships. Men grow frustrated by unrealistic expectations, while women limit themselves trying to fit every role. And so, our relationships often reflect only fragments of the feminine, not its full, radiant wholeness. But when we recognize these forces as complementary, everything changes. Sweetness and intensity can coexist. The embrace and the fire belong to the same soul. When this inner reconciliation happens, relationships become more authentic, deep, and free. The feminine no longer needs to choose between nurturing and transforming. It can embody both. In that unity, desire stops being guilt or danger and becomes power, connection, and awakening. 13. Healing sexuality through awareness. True healing in sexuality doesn't come from repression or indulgence. It comes from consciousness. Observe your desires without fear, face your impulses without judgment, and above all, seek to understand what lies behind each one. This is Jung's invitation, to integrate the energy of desire consciously. When we finally realize that desire speaks, we begin to listen with new ears. It reveals needs, uncovers wounds, and brings forgotten emotions back to the surface. Only through awareness can desire transform from something that binds us into something that awakens us.